Hi, this is Kola from the Better Informed Immigrants team. And if you have a question, comment, or topic for us to discuss at the Better Informed Immigrant podcast, please send us a note at qafrican@substack.com. That is qafrican@substack.com or biimmigrant@gmail.com. Again, biimmigrant@gmail.com. Thanks. Said I'm running you this letter and letting you know that my brother, he go better, he done better. Oh, nah, nah, nah. I'm running you this letter and letting you know that my sister, he go better, he done better. This is episode 6 of the Better Informed Immigrant podcast. And once again, we have the two regular hosts, Kola and KD, on the line. KD, how's it going today?
Great. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, KD. I'm doing great.
Awesome.
It was a rough work week, but it got better towards the end. Not because something changed, but because my mindset changed, I think. And that was helpful. It was good to have somebody to talk to at work and who helped me see a different perspective. And that was really helpful.
Awesome.
So today we wanted to kind of focus on investing topics, right? So you and I had a conversation this week about investing in Africa, what that means, how that goes, different things about that. I think we want to talk about investing more broadly. It could be Africa, it could be in the US, it could be in the West, it could be where you're located, and have that conversation about what to look at, how to think about it, and maybe even raise some questions that other people can think about and give us some responses to. Again, if you have a response that you'd like to give us, send it to us at qafrican@substack.com. And you can send us a voice note, or you can just type it up and we can read it during the podcast. So, KD, you went to an investing conference recently. Is that not true?
Correct. Yes, I did.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah, this is here in Connecticut. Connecticut Innovations. It's an organization that actually create programs and conferences to help entrepreneurs and small businesses in Connecticut. And the event that I went to really is about angel investors. Mm-hmm. So we had someone from an investment company present, and he actually presented more about what investors look at when it comes to investing in a company or making decisions to decide on which company to invest in. So they have an outline of all the specifics that they look at, either from the founding members of the company, the idea, the chances for that idea to actually succeed in the marketplace, and if the business is currently making money. So those are the things. I think the part of the business making money was really top of the list for them. Because according to him, investors, even if it's angel investing, they don't want to put money in a company that does not have any proof of revenue. Because one of the ways that you can actually prove to investors that your company is worth investing in is by showing them your books and saying that, hey, with the amount of funds that we have to get this up and running, we've been able to acquire this amount of customers, and we've been able to generate this amount of revenue. And that actually gives them like a runway to start to make a decision as to what to invest and how to invest in you. And it was really helpful because I went to this event with a counterpart that currently helping out with his payment processing software. And he's always had this belief that just by the story behind his software, the fact that Google actually invested in that software before they passed it on to Twitter, and Twitter later sold it. This software has really exchanged hands before he bought it. And he felt like he has a story that could actually convince investors that if Google actually was part of this at the beginning stages, maybe it's worth investing in. And he's always had that belief until like we went to this event. So what I did was after the event, I had to track down the investor. He was actually on his way out, and I had to go stop him because I needed to make sure that I can ask him straight questions in front of this, my counterpart, and he can actually get responses directly from him. Because it's a different perspective when someone you know or you're working with tells you something versus when you hear it from an outsider. And when that outsider is actually an investor or a potential investor. So we approached him and I asked him directly, like, this is what we do. This is what we have. The software helps with this. He was impressed by what we explained to him about the software. And then I told him that if we're to approach you and ask for investments, what are the things that you're looking for? And the next question he asked was, are you guys making money? That was the first thing they asked. I had to pause at that question because I wanted the owner to actually be the one responding to that, not me.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded himself and he said, we're not making money yet, but it's a very good software. It's this, it's that. It's like, well, you guys should do some marketing, get some customers. When you start to make money and let's say your revenue is like around $5,000 and you have like prospects, then come back and talk to me. So pretty much it's like, hey, if you guys start to make money, then I want to listen to you. If you're not making money, I don't have that time to devote to. And after he left, even though it was still in denial as to maybe he needed to present or he needed to like package this thing in front of this, but I knew that the next question I asked the investor was, okay, what if we can present to you that we've been able to acquire some customers, but we're not making money? In other words, maybe we offer free signups. And it was instant in his response. It's just like, no. And I understand where he was coming from because we've had scenarios where people are farming user base and investors will put money and down the road, investors are asking, I thought you said you had 1 million subscribers. How come none of them is paying you? How come your books don't show that you're making money 2 years afterwards? Because we can always prove that we got this 1 million subscribers by telling them to sign up for free for 1 year, which is all well and good. But after 1 year, if I've already invested in your company, I'm expecting that at least from a 1 million subscribers that you have, at least 10% of them should start paying some good money a year after. And you come back and tell me, oh, we're still not making money. So it was just trying to help us understand that even these days, investors don't want to invest in just knowing that you have user base. They just care to know that you're making money. And that gives them at least some level of confidence to start to listen to you. So that was really my big takeaway from that conference.
So when you say making money, does that mean you're making revenue or does that mean you're making a profit? I just want to make sure I clarify what you mean by making money.
I think revenue.
Okay. So you don't need to make a profit yet. You just have revenue coming in.
You just need to have revenue. And he said that the reason why that is critical, it's a way of confirming that there are people out there who like what you said. Because
somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yeah, if they're willing to pay for it, then well, we're all well and good. Because sometimes revenue could be maybe 1 or 2 things that you're doing wrong, which they think they can fix. But at least you have people paying on a monthly basis. That's what they care to know. And that opens up the opportunity to discuss further.
Okay. So you said you went to this, I will call it a workshop or presentation with a colleague. I guess the question is, how did you guys hear about the workshop? It looks as if it was an interesting one.
Yes, actually, I didn't sign up for this. He signed up for it.
Okay.
And reached out to me, asked if I was available, if it's something that I would like to attend. I was like, yeah, because I've never really attended any before this one. So I accepted to go along with him. But I think he said he signed up for either a blog or some site and they reached out to him. It was a paid event too. So he paid for my ticket as well as his. Okay. That's how I got to the event. But I don't recall how he got to know about it, but I can always get that information.
Okay. That's a really good point that you're bringing up. I'm trying to think about, sometimes you and I discuss ideas, right? And we talk about maybe investing in Africa or different places in Africa, investing here in the US or investing in ideas. This guy you're talking to is an angel investor, right? So, and I don't know if he told you guys like the percentage of startups that fail every year. Did he mention anything like that or no?
Not really. He just mentioned that from the list of investments that they have, because they're so detail oriented in their approach before investing, that they have a higher percentage of success rates.
Did he give the percentage?
I don't recall if it did.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know it was a higher percentage compared to like the businesses that they invested in that wasn't successful.
So generally, though, a lot of startups fail, right? Most of them fail. A few succeed. And the way that type of investing generally works is that you invest in maybe 10 different companies, right? Maybe 7 to 8 of them fail, but the 2 that succeed will grow enough such that you recoup all your money back. So
correct.
And that's kind of angel investing in a nutshell. This is very simplified. But the other thing is to say, okay, you know what? those lessons that you were talking about kind of apply to regular investing as well. And it's something that we can kind of discuss a little bit, because I think sometimes, we have an interesting idea and we think other people should give us money, or somebody tells us an interesting idea or an interesting story, and we are so quick to give our money out to people. And my concern with those kind of things is that usually these people are not good stewards of the money, right? Some of these people are not going to be as conservative with the money as you would with your own money. Right. So you are kind of giving your money to them to maybe develop this business. And the person, I'm coming up with a story here, but the person basically takes your money and uses it to go eat lunch all day. Right. And then he doesn't invest in the business at all. And for you, I don't know what the situation is, but for you, sometimes when you give that person the money, that may be your life savings, right? How many stories have we heard of, especially in Nigeria? I've never met somebody that did this personally, but I've always heard stories from family that they know somebody, which who knows if that's true or not, who basically retired somewhere in the West, decided to go to Nigeria, took their life savings, their 401k, all of the money, took it out and invested it in Nigeria. And in a few years, the money has been squandered. They're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, right? And part of that is being, hey, you were probably not a good steward of your money. That's number one. But number two is you probably went to go trust somebody else who didn't understand how much time you had spent working to accumulate that resource, and who just decided to waste it because it was available to him very easily based on the story. So I think it kind of is an important topic. This investing topic is an important one to discuss. And I really appreciate you for bringing it up, because we can kind of dive into different aspects. And I'd like to use an example that happens. One of the things you and I talk about has been investing in Nigeria. And before I was really gung-ho about investing in Nigeria, but when I spent time there...
Before Nigeria showed you.
Before Nigeria showed me, like you said. But when I spent time there, the conclusion that I came to were two things. Number one was that the return on investment wasn't worth it, right? So you're investing money there, and then the money you're going to get back is, even if you are making a profit, the profit is so small when you convert it back to dollars that it's not worth the investment, right? Then there's the second thing about saying, hey, for you to do something like that, you also need to be on ground because of the socioeconomic situation of the country, as well as the ability to trust people, right? Sometimes people tend to be on a better behavior if you are physically present than if you are a while away. So that's number two. But one third reason that I didn't bring up to you that I think I should have also mentioned if it wasn't clear before is, what is your option? So when you are deciding what to invest money in, you always have options, right? You could do this investment or you could do a different investment. And one of the simple options here in the US, we're going to use that as an example, is to buy treasuries, right? Treasury bonds, or buy stocks. When I say stocks in this case, I'm not talking about individual stocks. I think there's a place for that. I'm talking about like buying an index, right? So a basket of stocks like the S&P 500, right? Because that tends to be more conservative than if you buy individual stocks. And for some people who are just beginning their investing journey, it may be an easier entry point to get to than to start figuring out how to pick individual stocks. So let's kind of use that as an example, right? The S&P 500, the return on that is somewhere between 8 and 10% a year on average, right? So what does that mean really? It doesn't mean that every year it's going to go up 8%. It means that this year it may go up 20%. Next year it may go down 2%, right? The following year may go up 5%. The next year it may go down 1%. But when you average it over a period of time, and they've done this calculation, we can actually pull up some graphs sometimes and actually walk through this. But when you average it over a period of time, you find out that it's going up at a rate of 8% a year. So the question I would ask is, if I have money, I have an option of putting it into the S&P 500 and get 8% a year, or I have an option to go invest it in an opportunity that is somewhere else here in the US or maybe in Africa, right? The 8% a year S&P opportunity, I put it in, I don't have to think about it, right? I don't have to chase anybody down. I don't have to call Lagbaja to say, hey, what are you doing or what are you not doing? I basically set it and forget it for all intents and purposes, right? But the other opportunities, I may need to do a lot more involvement. So if I'm going to invest in that opportunity has to provide a return that is much higher than 8% to account for the increased risk and the increased labor that goes into it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
so,
I do.
It's like when you're looking at opportunities in Nigeria or you're looking at opportunities in other African countries, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, what is the return on that investment? And how does it compare to a reasonably safe investment here in the US? Assuming that you are here in the US, if you're in the UK, you could say, how does it compare to a reasonably safe investment in the UK? In the UK, you'll probably be investing in I think it's called the FC So FTSE. And I don't know what the growth rate of that is or what the performance of that is over a period of time. I should clarify a few things before you go, just because I don't know how much information the audience has or how well they know about investing. But investing tends to be a long-term game, right? So what do I mean by that is I'm not encouraging anybody to go put their money into the markets today and then say, oh, Kola said in one year you get 8%, right? The market goes up and it goes down, but on average it goes up 8% a year. So if you're going to invest in the market, this is money that you probably would plan to put there for about 3 to 5 years, because within those 3 to 5 years, it can go up and go down. But on average, by the time it gets to that third year or fifth year, you should have about 8% growth per year. I think the 3 to 5 year time period gives you enough bandwidth such that even if you did have a recession, like we had some recently during the COVID one or even the 2008 one, like that one, we went into a recession, but we were out of it in a year and a half or so, right? So even if you had a recession, you have enough time to recover back. And people tend to get scared when recessions happen. Don't be scared, right? Yes, you see your portfolio go down 20, 30, 40%. That is not the time to put the money out, right? That is the time, if you have additional money, have additional savings, to put it in actually, so that it can grow when the market rebounds. Again, make sure you learn a little bit more about investing. Don't just take my word for it, right? When it comes to money, you need to be the steward of your own money. But moving away from that to the original topic, when you are going to do any opportunity that involves money, the question I would like you to ask yourself is, how does it compare to the alternative? And the alternative in this case being the reasonably safe treasury bonds. I don't know what treasury bonds are now. I think they may be like 6% or so. I have not checked recently. Or the S&P 500. So that's kind of what I was saying. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. It does. I'm trying to find the right way to position this without being too sentimental or too patriotic.
Yep.
Because I believe, like, for Africans in diaspora, we have this part of us that says, I need to have something that I can call mine in my home country.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it goes beyond just the profitability of that thing. It goes to our sentiment and our patriotism to really want to have something, especially sometimes we always, and I'm not saying there are facts about this out there or if this is actually going to happen or not, but there are rumors about, oh, what if America goes to war?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go back to your home country.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to go to something that you've started years back, or are you going to go start from scratch?
Mm.
So there's that fear factor about, do I actually have anything? And I believe that also is part of the reason why you hear people trying to build houses over there. They buy lands and they want to build houses.
Mm-hmm.
Just so if it happens that you have to go back, you're not renting or living with a family or trying to figure out how you like put a roof over your head, especially if you have a family, you know. So there is that part of it. And sometimes people feel like, if I have to do some things over there, why not also have a business so that I can start establishing myself there? Now, not everyone is interested in like trying to convert the currency back to dollars. Some people just see it as, I've made a good chunk of money in the US. I want to devote part of what I've made to establish something. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it helps them maybe build the houses that they do want to build. And to them, that could be, yes, I've achieved what I wanted this business to do. Whatever happens afterwards could be icing on the cake. It could be, oh, it pays my relatives or my siblings. And if they run it down, oh, well and good. I'm still based here. I'm not going down there anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So there are different scenarios for like why people do this. But I think the sentimental part of it is like top of the list. Sometimes we know that the economy is not stable. Mm. We know that the currency is always fluctuating. But then we are still asking ourselves that question: what happens if America goes to war?
Mm. So I think you're bringing up a few different points here. So let's kind of talk about it individually. I'm going to break down what you said into different chunks. So there's one portion that says, hey, what happens if America goes to war? And that's fine. You can say, I want to have a backup plan, right? One of the things we talked about in one of our earlier episodes is having a backup plan, right? Yep. But let's not call that investing. That is not investing. That's having a backup plan. And if you want to go do something, you can go do it. I don't care what you do, but don't call it investing, is my point. It's something else. There's a second part that says, hey, I want to do stuff in my home country to kind of benefit my family members or whatnot. You could also do that, but that may also not be investing, right? There's nothing wrong with having a family business and the family is benefiting from it. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking at it as an investment, not a charity case, it has to make sense as a business, right? And that's where the return comes into play. Is it making a return? Now, most people that I know, and we're using Nigeria as an example because we're of Nigerian descent and we know a lot of Nigerians, but most people that I know here in the US, most of them tried different opportunities to invest in Nigeria or contribute to the economy in Nigeria. And all of them, to my knowledge, ended up in failure, right? They did like the shipping cars to be sold, shipping machine equipment to be sold. And for different reasons or another, they all failed. And the issue I have is not necessarily failure. I think failure is part of business, right? You do some things, they're going to succeed. You do some things, they're going to fail. The issue I have is that sometimes when people are making this investment, they're not making a small investment. When you look at it within the bounds of their financial picture, they are betting the house.
Correct.
Right. So if you are betting the house and you lose, that is devastating. Versus if I had $5,000, for example, and I bet with $50, if I lose that, it's not a big deal. So there's a kind of difference there. And that's what I'm kind of looking at. The other thing I would say is that, and this is just me speaking, right? Like a lot of people build houses in Africa and there's a place for doing that. But the reality of this is that all of those houses are not being populated, right? In Nigeria, especially, they will build a house. They will build this big fence because they're worried about security. And then nobody will live in the house. What's the point of having a house that is not being lived in? And the same house that you built is basically going to get destroyed because there's nobody doing the upkeep. There's nobody there. So multiple aspects of it, right? So there's the aspect of saying, hey, you sent money to people to help you build a house. They didn't build a house, right? They just took your money, which is a separate part. But there's also the part, they built the house. This house seems to always cost more than they should have cost. And then nobody ever lives there, right? And it's like, you just put money in a place that is doing nothing. And usually for a lot of these people, when they do these things, what's going on is they're taking dollars. I'm using the US example, and they're sending it to Nigeria. And the moment you send it to Nigeria and you convert it to Naira, the value just goes down, right? Because Naira continues to inflate at a ridiculous rate. So I think those are the kind of challenges that I see there. So I don't have a problem with people investing in Nigeria. What I say is make sure that it is a small piece of your portfolio. Because the reality of the situation is that we don't know what tomorrow is. Tomorrow, Nigeria could be booming, right? Mm-hmm. And even though there's significant inflation now, it's unrealistic for it to be tomorrow exactly. But, in the future, it could be a situation where Nigeria is the next China, right? And all of those things that are depreciating now just accumulate significant value. That is possible. But if you're going to do something like that, again, take a small piece of your portfolio and do those things, not a significant piece. What bothers me a little bit would be people who are not investing in their future now. What I mean investing for their future now is putting money away for their retirement, doing the necessary steps. They don't do those things, but they take all their money, all their savings, and then send it to Nigeria to do stuff. And time again has shown that those things don't work. Does that make sense?
It does. Also, although there's a difference when we try to bring investors into this conversation, right? Because when we talk about investors, we're talking about people who actually have the money set aside specifically for investing. And especially if they're angel investors, they know that once they do their due diligence and they invest in 10 businesses or 10 startups, for example, they know a percentage of that would fail. And the ones that succeed would be where, like you said, they would hope to recoup whatever they've lost in the other businesses. Because we've had investments that have gone into Nigeria, right? Either for Paystack or some other businesses in Nigeria where foreign investors really invested in Nigeria, even amidst the instability in the country. They still trust that it's a place to invest in. There are probably some things that they see wouldn't be a barrier to entry or a barrier to their investment, is why they felt they can still go ahead and invest. So I still would want us to kind of talk about that. Like, what do they see that we don't see? Because I often hear about foreign companies investing in Nigeria, and more than I hear about Nigerians or Africans generally investing in their own country. Foreigners tend to do more of the investing.
So I think two things. Number one is I am not sure that I agree with your statement that foreigners tend to do more of the investing. I think what happened is that Nigerians, and we're using Nigeria as the example here, tried to invest in their country. They all got strong. So they said, I'm not doing this again, right? which then opened up more of an opportunity for foreigners to go do that. I think the thing with the foreigners, like you said, and I think there are different scenarios. And again, I don't have facts to back what I'm about to say up because I've not necessarily studied it. But in some cases, the foreigner is making a calculated bet. Again, they're not taking their life savings to do this. They're taking money that they can get rid of. What I mean get rid of is if they lose the money, it's not a big deal for them, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's a small piece of their portfolio,
yeah.
Right? So that's what I mean by they can get rid of. So, for example, we all know, just simplistically, right? Paystack is a payment processing company. As Nigeria continues to develop, you are going to have a need for payment processing, right? There's a need now, but it will continue to increase. So if you had the financial resources, you could make a bet to say, hey, I'm going to buy Paystack or I'm going to buy a portion of Paystack because I know this is an area that will grow. And I know that I may not make any money in the next, let us say 5 years, in the next 10 years. But as that economy continues to grow over time, I will make money going forward. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that is a core need that exists, right? And even better, if it makes money now, fantastic, like you said, which I don't know the numbers for Paystack, but I know they are processing payments now. So they are obviously making revenue. They may not be making profits. I don't really know what their numbers are, but you get my point. People are using it today. But I think that's the key thing. And I think that some of those foreign investors that you're talking about are more institutional investors. So they have bigger pools of capital. So when they invest their 2% or 3% in Nigeria, that is millions of dollars versus the traditional Nigerian citizen or Nigerian diaspora. It's not institutional. It's my independent savings or your independent savings. We're not pulling together as a group, right? So when we invest our money, it may be something as simple as $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, depending on what our financial strength is. But that is like 50%, 60, 70% of our savings. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
So I think that is one core thing. Now, do I think that somebody could take strategic steps in Nigeria? Yes. I actually think if you find opportunities like the payment processing as an example, they're having revenue now. They may or may not be making profits. We don't know, but let's assume they're not making profits. But this is something that will continue to grow within the economy and there's a demand for it. It makes more sense to use take 2% of your portfolio and put it in that investment, right? That's fine. If you have other opportunities like that, that's also fine. I don't have a problem with people doing that. But what I have a problem with people doing is taking significant chunks of their capital and investing it over there, especially when I compare it to alternative investments here in the US. If you are in the US, you get my point. Wherever you are located is where you want to invest in because you kind of have a better understanding of what's going on around you, right? It's difficult for me to invest in the UK because I don't know what's going on in the UK, right? I can read the BBC, but that doesn't necessarily tell me what's on the ground knowledge of the UK and how the economy works versus because I'm here in the US, I have more of an understanding of what's going on compared to my understanding of the UK. Did I address your question?
Yes, you did. The other aspect of it, though, is the idea that, and I think this is more of a FOMO, like fear of missing out, than the fear of investing. Because the confidence we have sometimes when it comes to investing in Nigeria or Africa generally is that it also becomes like a springboard or a wrong way to getting ourselves connected to the economy. And sometimes when you go in there early, and I'll give an example, this is not necessarily the case for everybody, but as you well know, we have an event management company in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And because this has been in operation for more than 2 or 3 years now, mm-hmm. it's created the level of history and presence that makes it possible to work with a bank or get jobs from like more reputable companies because they would rather do business with people who have been in the industry than you who just started today. Now, I'm not ignoring the aspect of is it profitable or not profitable? It still has to be a profitable business. But sometimes our fear of missing out overcomes some of those nuances at the beginning stages because we believe that give it a year or 2 or 3 years, as long as you have the right things in place that can help you expand the business or grow the business, that the chances are high for that business as opposed to you losing completely in that business. And one of the reasons for that too is I'll put it in perspective. Like if you're going to have an encounter with somebody from the country who maybe is one of the top executive of one of these companies over there that are the big companies in the country, you are able to actually mention what you're doing in the country. And sometimes that goes a long way in ingratiating you or establishing that relationship from a business standpoint. Versus you have zero presence, you have no attachment.
Mm-hmm.
So that fear of missing out sometimes I think plays a big role in our decision making. I'm not ignoring the part where you say still make sure that it is a profitable, as in the profit that you're going to get from this, make sure it's 3x or 4x in comparison to you putting it in stocks before going for it. Now, your year one might not be exactly what you expect it to be because you're just starting, but you know that the projection for your business, if you put the right things in place and do the right things, can get you to 4x of what you could have gotten if you put it in stocks over here or in any of the country that we are in diaspora. So those are the critical aspect of this. And I had a meeting with someone yesterday who also is based in the island, and she also owns a company in Nigeria. I actually worked with her over 2 decades ago for a little bit. And we're just really discussing generally. And she said something to me that I agree with from a perspective, again, of this FOMO or having some kind of presence. She said that to her, Nigeria is still one of the best places to do business. The few people who can make that statement are people who actually maybe have the network to places that most people don't have access to. Because what that does is it takes your business from 0 to 4 or 5x or even 10x in a short time. Because there's a statement in Nigeria we always say is who you know, not what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of who you know means that you can start a business today, and because of who you know, you can go to 10x in less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself encourages investment because being able to establish yourself before you get to who you know helps your case versus you met who you know and you actually don't have anything working yet.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the nuances, that fear of missing out, because as long as we are overseas, we are still constantly looking for opportunities in our countries that we're trying to connect with or connect to. And you don't want to be in a position where when that opportunity comes, you're just at the beginning of the game. Whereas there are other people that have been like far gone in the game. So I think those are still valid points. But again, it doesn't ignore the aspect of still doing your due diligence, making sure that the business you're going to has the potential to succeed. The profit that you're going to be making from it is better off 4 times or 5 times if you consider you could have put the money in stocks and hang on the 8% yearly or as high as 20%. So those are like aspects of it that are very critical to consider as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you're changing the topic a little bit, which is fine, but we can kind of talk about that. So initially we started with like investing. So I was looking at it from the perspective of being an investor.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about it from the perspective of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. Which for me, it's similar, but different. There is nothing wrong. I actually would tell people, if you see an opportunity in your home country, explore it. Just to explore it in a disciplined manner. Kind of put on your investor mindset and say, hey, how much money will I invest in this? Again, small pieces of your portfolio, right? Not significant pieces of your portfolio. You cannot take a risk in the country and then lose 50% of your portfolio or lose 100% and be starting at 0. So if you are saying to me, hey, you know what, I have this opportunity, or I think there's this opportunity, there's going to be this demand, and I want to start working on this particular thing, sure, set up a company, start working on it. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not encouraging people not to do that. I'm just saying be disciplined in how you do it. In the sense of, if you're going to invest your capital, or if other people are going to invest their capital into somebody else's idea, you invest a small amount of your capital by percentage number, not by the actual amount. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. And, you say all these things, and I want to play devil's advocate here, right? I'm sure that everything you said is true. But the people that you never talk to are the people that failed. And we know from life experience that more people fail than they succeed, right? Kind of like when people talk to you about investing too, right? Oh, I got 20%. So I'm using social media as an example. Oh, I did this and I got 25% a year. they don't talk about the fact that when the market went down. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you need to kind of look at it in context in that particular state. I do think that, and I do support fully that people should find a way to invest. If they see a need to find a way to actually start up businesses in their home country. It's a shame, in my opinion, that a lot of African companies don't make it easier for people to do that because, yes, a lot of these businesses may fail, but some of them will succeed. And the ones that succeed are going to provide and contribute to the economy, which is positive because it gives people jobs. I think one of the biggest problems, in Nigeria specifically, apart from security, is the lack of jobs, right? And I think that's kind of important. So that's kind of how I think about it. It's like saying, as an entrepreneur, yes, you can explore things, but be disciplined. Put on your investor hat if you're going to put your money in. If you want to start a company, registering a company is not a big deal. There's not a lot of money. If you want to start building relationships, if you want to have one small piece of equipment here or there, that's fine. Maintain your presence, do some things, that's fine. But don't go invest 10% of your capital or 20% of your capital into something that is going to produce zero. And, you talk about 4x, 5x, or 10x. 10x of $1 is not much, right? So, like, when we talk 10x sometime, that kind of sounds like a big deal, but it's really like, how much are you getting, right? Kind of make sure you understand what the return on investment is. And I think that's the key thing. For me specifically, like I told you before, my issue was really the return on investment didn't make sense to me. And a case and point that we can use as an example is a lot of people get encouraged either by family members or people that are tied to all these real estate companies in Nigeria, and they get pushed houses. Oh, buy this house here. It will appreciate. It will do this. It will do that. Sure. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Probably will, right? But when you buy this house and you look at it, you're not going to be there, so you're going to rent it out as an example, right? Mm-hmm. And if I rent, I think I did a calculation for like one or two properties with you actually, right? And we said that if we rented this property out at the current rate of that particular location, it will take 60 years just to get your money back. That's not an investment, right? Because there is no investment that makes sense for you to invest all this money down and get your money back 60 years later.
Before you start making profit.
When I mean get your money back, it's like zero profit. 60, you've made zero profit. You just got your money back that you actually invested in. That's not wise. Now, if you said I want to have a house in Nigeria and this is not an investment, go ahead and do it, right? Because you're not looking at it as an investment. I think that's kind of the difference, what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think there's more to that conversation, right? Because I was explaining this actually to my mom because she owns the house that she's currently renting out. And I was doing the math for her so she can understand what we just talked about in terms of, I think she's renting it out maybe 150,000 naira per flat. And I was asking her, like, just estimate how much have you spent in building this house, right? And when she gave me the number and I did the math for what she's renting, she has 3 flats, I think? Yeah, 3 flats. So I was giving her the number. I was saying it would take you close to 30 years to get that money back. She couldn't believe it. She's like, what? But I explained to her that I think that math worked in the past. It worked for people who bought those land at maybe 500 naira or 1,000 or 5,000 naira, right? Because if you had bought the house years back and you then build the house now in a community where the least you will get for rent is maybe 500,000 or 1.2 million, for example. Now you're renting out maybe a couple of flats and you're making up to 10 million for a land that you bought or a house that you built for less. Because at that point, your capital investment wasn't as high as it is now. Now, if you try to buy a land, you're already spending like 10 million in that same area to buy a land. And then you try to build it, you're already going like 50 million or 60 million, depending on how big you want to build the house. And then you end up renting it for 250 or 500,000 there. So that makes it harder to recoup the money back in a short time. But people who've owned lands that they bought cheaper years back and just like we're talking about, if it's your portfolio and that's money that you can just like let go of, you can use it to hold something down because it was cheap at that point to buy it. But to now go out and buy a land now, the math is not really mathing anymore in that perspective. It worked in the past, but right now, it's not working.
I'm laughing because you said the math is not really mathing. I think I had heard that sometimes people say that you were the first person, apart from the person who told me that story, that's used that phrase or sentence, the math is not mathing.
So, if anybody says that, you already know which country they are from.
You are right in what you said. And maybe one option is actually to just buy land. You can maybe just buy land as an investment. Maybe that's one option. And you're kind of like land banking. I don't see the value in doing that compared to some of the alternatives, but it could be an option, right? But what I would also say is that it doesn't really matter what happened in the past. Yes, we all know that things are always more expensive today than they were in the past. If I told you, Kolade, that you should give me your money, I'm going to go buy a property here in the US. And I said, I will pay you your money back with no interest in 60 years. Would you do that investment?
No.
So why is it that we do it when it's now Africa?
Again, is it attachment, the sentiment?
But you get my point in the sense that there are some deals that we would not do here in the US. If you call yourself a real estate investor, you will never do that deal here in the US. We can say that property values, yes, I know property value varies across different parts of the country in Nigeria, just like they vary across different parts of the country here in the US as well. But property values on average in the US cost more than it does in Nigeria if you just convert it to dollars, right? You're using the standard denomination. Property values here in the US cost more than they do in Nigeria. So the excuse that we say, hey, things are more expensive now in Nigeria and that's why the math doesn't matter, it doesn't quite work because we don't do that here. We don't enter into those kind of deals here where the math is not matter. So if you're not going to enter into those kind of deals here, you should not enter into those kind of deals over there. Is my point. Right now, if you want to buy a house because you want to have a house, that's going to be your backup plan, or you want to have it for another reason that's not an investment, go ahead and do it. But if you're going to call it an investment, and which is how some of these people will sell it to you, right? They'll say, oh, it's an investment. If it's an investment, you have to apply the principles of finance to it. And the principles of finance, if they don't work, don't force it. It is not the investment for you. Move away from it. Let somebody else buy it if they want to buy it. That's my point.
Yeah, we should also add that if there's anyone out there, or if there are people out there who are real estate investors that believe in real estate investing in Africa or Nigeria specifically, and if they have a different perspective to this, maybe they know some things that we don't know, they should feel free to reach out and provide their comments, or even if we can have them on as a guest to educate us and maybe provide more insight. That would be great.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, right? Because I'm speaking from my perspective or from my experience, but I don't know the full picture, right? Somebody else will speak from a different perspective or a different experience, and they can point out the blind spots that I am not saying or you are not saying. So that's kind of important. So if anybody is an expert in this area, I know that experts is being thrown around now, but if you have a different perspective, maybe you could share it with us. Or if you're just involved in the real estate industry, either in Nigeria or some other place in Africa, send us a voice note. We can always bring you on and just talk about the industry and how it works and get a better understanding from somebody who has boots on the ground knowledge.
Correct.
So we talked about investing, and I know we've been talking about investing back home, and we're talking about like principles of finance and things like that and how it applies to those investments. But let's kind of talk about investments in general, and especially investing in the country where you find yourself now. So one of the things that I think is important, I was having this conversation with somebody today, was, hey, a lot of us, we have jobs, right? And we make our primary way of making money or having an income is through the payment from those jobs. But to accelerate our ability to accumulate wealth is to do investing, right? I do think it's very important for everybody to invest. And what I mean by invest, I mean invest in the country where you are in right now. For most people in the US, the easiest way for people to invest is to invest in their 401ks or to invest in the stock market. The 401k invests in the stock market, but it provides the tax advantage. But investing in the stock market, whether it's getting your own brokerage accounts, investing that way, or investing in your 401ks. If you have a 401k, you have access to things like that, do that one first because it has some tax advantages that you want to take care of. It has some limitations as well, but you want to do that first, maximize that to the fullest, and then also explore other opportunities that are available. And we can talk more about some of these things a little bit later. But the point I'm trying to make is that the moment you start investing, now you have a situation where your money is working for you, right? So yes, you're still working, you're getting paid, but your money that you are putting in that investment vehicle is also working and is getting paid, right? We talk about that 8% a year. That 8% a year is not trivial, especially because you keep getting 8%. So the 8% from last year also gets another 8% this year, including the original principal. So the principle is called compounding interest, right? We need to maybe talk about that sometime and really dive into it. But one of the easiest ways to become wealthy is to take advantage of that. And one of the easiest ways you take advantage of that is to invest in the stock market, right? If you want to invest in a different vehicle, that's fine, as long as it's a good vehicle and it's easy and it works for you. So, for example, if you don't know anything about houses and you tell me you want to invest in the real estate game, I'll tell you, what are you doing? But if you are really good and really handy with houses and you want to do it in a proper way and you want to invest in real estate, go ahead and do that. But the easiest way that takes very little time and energy, it could take a lot more time and energy if you want it to, but it could also take very little time and energy. It's a 401k that's usually provided to most people at their jobs. And you definitely want to take advantage of that. What I see sometimes, or what I've heard sometimes, is people are not taking advantage of those accounts. They're not investing in the market, especially because of a couple of things. Number one, some people will say things like, and I'm using Nigerians, for example, they didn't have the experience of investing in those markets back in Nigeria, right? So they kind of feel, is this thing sketchy, right? That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Number two is that every time the market goes down, when we have a recession, which doesn't happen every single year, but it happens every few years or so, approximately every 8 years or so, maybe even a little bit more frequently than that. Some of it is bigger scale or smaller scale. It's the time where the people will put the fear of God in them for some reason or another, right? Somebody who, in my opinion, is trying to take advantage. Like, oh, how's your portfolio doing? The person will say, oh, it was 500 before, but now it is now 250. And the person say, oh, why did you do that? You should have done something else. Take the money out and go do this, go do that. And before you know it, they take the money out and they squander the money and it's no longer available. Right? You don't want to take your money out during a recession. Please do not do that. Please do not do that. And we can talk more about that later. That is the time, if you have even more money, to put more money in, right? Again, you need to be stewards of your own money. We can talk about how to learn some of these things, but you need to know a little bit more about how to use these vehicles. And what I mean by learning a little bit more about how to use these vehicles, to me, it means you don't necessarily need to know how to fix your car, but you need to know how to drive your car, right? So what I'm talking about is learning how to drive your car. If you want to, you can extend your knowledge to the point where you can fix your car yourself. And we can talk about those kind of things when it comes to investing. But the key thing I'm trying to say is, if you don't want to keep running the rat race, get your paycheck, squandering all your money, not saving anything for tomorrow, you need to start learning about how to invest. And the easiest way to do that in the US specifically, in a lot of developed countries specifically, I should say also, is using the stock market. And learning how to do that is really important. And some of it is, you don't really need a lot of knowledge to do the basics. If you learn a little bit more, you can be more effective. And we can talk about some of those things. But some people are not taking advantage of that. I think that's somewhere that I think we as immigrants need to improve on, because it is important to have those money that we are saving begin to work for us as well. I'm very passionate about this, as you can tell.
Correct.
So I'm going to
Correct. I was just about to say that we need to have an episode dedicated to just invest in education, and have you just do a quick overview of every aspect of investing, from 401k to stocks. That episode would just be a standalone episode that we can always share with friends and families, and just have anyone who's interested in investing in stocks or 401k to use it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe we could start doing it starting from the next episode. There's this book. It's not big. It's very small. It's called The Wealthy Barber. And it's a very simple approach to like personal finance. It kind of teaches you the basics of what people need to know. It could be a good vehicle for talking through this. Maybe we could start a book club and we just go through it chapter by chapter. And it kind of goes over some of these things and goes over other things as well. But it could be a very good organized way to kind of go through those topics one by one. And maybe it's something we could discuss on the podcast. That's really a good point to bring up. So let's go into the fantasy section. Are you ready?
Yes, fantasy.
This is the fantasy section where we talk about business ideas that may or may not ever come into place, or could work. So I'm thinking about Zambia and farming. Tell me about the Zambia and farming.
Well, Zambia is at the forefront of our conversations recently, because the situation in Nigeria is not smiling. So we're looking beyond our shores to see what's possible. And recently, I've had meetings with a couple of people who actually encouraged me about the stability in Zambia and the possibility of lands and exploring like some kind of farming. Either it's poultry farming or just having like a banana farm or plantain farming, just farming generally. This is just still in discussion phase. And just being able to go there and explore what's possible. And I don't want to call this a fear of missing out again. But the driving force of that too is sometimes what you don't know. And sometimes sitting back could also mean missing out because, and I think I read this quote somewhere where it says that not trying something at all can be equated to failure versus you just sitting back, because you never know what could have happened with something that you never tried. And I think sometimes that drives me. I'm never worried about trying something. I worry more about not trying it, because now it's going to hit me up, because I'll always think about what could have happened. If I go into it, which goes back to the idea of when you're going into something, start small. Like, just use something that you can afford to lose. That way, even if it doesn't work out, you can pat yourself on the back and say, yeah, I tried, but you know. But yeah, just the possibility of being able to see what's possible out there and tap into it early. Because there's also this idea that as the year goes by, whatever, which we talked about in terms of land acquisition too, right? Like what the land you bought 10 years ago, the value is not the same 10 years after. So just being able to tap into that, because I was surprised when I was told that $5,000, I think over 100 acres of land.
Oh,
and that just like,
that's $50 per acre.
Yeah, around that, right? So that just got my attention, and I'm like, what?
Well, that could be interesting, because I don't think you could get an acre of land in Nigeria for $50.
Nah, not possible. not. Like you go to the deepest forest, you can't get it. And if you go by it, you might even lose it eventually. So don't even try it.
You know what? I may want to listen in on these conversations. If you can get land for $50, that's
yeah.
You know, you can put a small piece. And
what actually piqued my interest was not just the price; it was the process. Because it was explained to me, and I just hear the explanation. I'm like, this doesn't happen with us in Nigeria. Like, like you're buying the land, you're going to the chief. The chief is confirming that you own the land, the chief of that specific community, right? And then you go into the council. The council, like, you have like different touch points.
Yep.
That helps to confirm your ownership of a land. Like, that's the first time in an African country that I'm hearing that. I'm like, okay, this sounds like, okay, I can work with this.
You can work with this.
I can work with this. Like,
KD wants to go. He wants to exchange his citizenship from Nigeria to Zambia.
You know? And the other, so I was talking to two different people. The other person was actually talking about the land that she got, that the chief of that community intentionally made sure that she was the one who bought that land over a foreign company. So basically, she was competing with a foreign company, and the chief said, why would he sell the land to some foreign company when the child of the land is here? And that was how she got it, because of where the land was positioned. The land is positioned by the border of Tanzania. And she felt like it's a potential opportunity for like tourists who are traveling from Tanzania into Zambia and vice versa. And even for foreigners who are coming into either of this country and they're trying to like move around from one country to another between Zambia and Tanzania. And she was already thinking of things that she could do with the land, but she had to fight the battle of getting that land. But again, to now have somebody who can sell that land to you, that also like piqued my interest. I'm like, if this was Nigeria, the chief would like, when you both give me more money, and I'll give it to land. So it's just, I'm like, I heard those stories, and I'm like, okay, this is like, I don't have to hear things like this. I don't have to hear a chief say, why would I sell it to some foreigner when the child of the land is here?
Exactly.
Like, wow, I like the sound of that. So, yeah.
I was just thinking, based on what you're talking about, like, this may not be true for you, but I am too blind to the rest of Africa in the sense that I wasn't aware that, obviously I knew about Zambia as a country, but I wasn't aware that they had a streamlined process for being able to buy and sell land in Zambia. That's one thing. And then two was that this prices, but the land would be for prices like this. This is a really good example of what we're talking about, right? So one could take a small piece of your portfolio and make an investment here. It could just be a speculative thing. If you lose it all, no big deal, right? But if it works out, it could be a pretty big deal. So I think one of the things I'm going to maybe do, and I think we need an intern. We need an intern to help us do some research. But one of the things I think we need to do is maybe start taking a look at different African countries that are stable and looking at, what are land prices in those different areas to see opportunities exist. Because, we tend to look, well, when I say I shouldn't say we, I should say I. Sorry. Sometimes when I think about investing in Africa, I think about investing in Nigeria first before investing in the different African country. And Nigeria being the way it is, it may be more wise to invest in other African countries and let Nigeria settle down a little bit more before you start investing in Nigeria.
Yeah, and not use Nigeria as the mirror into like seeing the other countries.
Correct.
Because that could be discouraging.
Correct. It's kind of like interesting that you say that. So this is a really good point. Thank you for bringing this up. And we need an intern. So I would like to get an intern from the continent. If you are on the continent, when I'm in the continent, I'm in Africa, and you are willing to work with us as an intern, send us an email at qafrican@substack.com or biimmigrant@gmail.com. We would love to have a chat with you and see if we could work together on some things in the future. But I interrupted you on this whole Zambian thing. Let me give the touch back to you so you can continue talking about this. And the next question I'm going to ask you, which I would like you to also discuss, is could you invite these individuals as guests on our podcast so we can actually talk to them about the process?
Yes. And I think they probably would be interested in doing that because they might have a way of actually encouraging you more.
Okay.
Because they will have more information than I do, maybe about their plans for the lands that they've both acquired and their expectations and maybe why they believe their country is a better environment for such investment.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I've actually been promised a place to stay if I do decide to show up in Zambia. So.
Oh, when are we going to Zambia? Let's go.
Yeah, I'm thinking before the year is out. The lady that bought the land that was close to the border says she's going to be traveling in July. I can't make that one, but I think they often travel. So I'll just keep in touch to see when their next travel plan would be, and we can maybe connect with that and go see what's happening out there.
Yeah, that would be interesting to go see that. And it would also be interesting to see a different African country too. I've been to a few countries in West Africa, but I've not really been Zambia. So Zambia is not in West Africa, but I've not really been to that part of the continent. So that would be interesting to see on that part.
Correct.
Any other fantasy and ideas that you have going on right now?
Aside from that, nothing specific or nothing that I'm able to share here because I signed an NDA.
This is good. I actually like the fact that they're signing NDAs now. It makes people a little bit more disciplined. So that's good.
I signed an NDA and that one I think we can discuss offline.
Okay. So let me ask you one more question. This is not really fantasy because one of the things that you do is you are a musician. Actually, our theme song for the podcast is one of the songs that did you write that song or did you? I know you sang, it was your song, you sang it, but did you write it as well?
Yes, I did. And the story behind that song is, the story behind that song makes me sad about Nigeria when I think about what's happening there.
Okay.
Because I think, so I wrote the song over a decade ago.
Okay.
So you can imagine writing a song about Nigeria becoming better over a decade ago, and then it's still relevant this year. We're still hoping that it gets better. And I think now it's actually worse than it was 10 plus years ago. So, and this is a song that I've had to record twice. The first time I recorded it, I was a struggling artist. And even though I say I was a struggling artist, maybe I'm not struggling right now because I don't do music full time. So back then I was hoping music would be my way into becoming big and making good money. But I recorded it first time using Rihanna and Eminem's, I don't know the title of the song anymore. This is old school, but it's the just wanna that song. Okay. Because I like the way you
was it Monster?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Like the way you lie kind of song. Yeah. I know the song.
So, and I was saying there's a we back then. There's a couple of us back then who couldn't afford a producer. Mm-hmm. So we really couldn't pay a producer to go create a beat for us. So we'll go online and go find a beat and then write a song to it.
Okay.
So I listened to the song, and you can imagine where my brain was or where my life was at that point in time, where you listen to a song like that, and the lyrics I could come up with is Nigeria go better. You can imagine.
It's not funny, but it's funny. I'm sorry. The things we laugh about is not funny, but it's so funny.
You know, like I'm sitting in front of a computer, I'm listening to Eminem and Rihanna's beats, and I'm writing you this letter to let you know that my brother, he go better. He don't better. It's just weird. Like, dude, this suffering has gotten to the point where I just numb myself to whatever the song was. I'm like, this is gonna be Nigeria go better, you know, in a way. And so what I did was I took my lyrics and I took the instrumental from that song and went into the studio.
Okay.
And little did I know back then, because back then we're just all like trying to make music. None of us was trying to go check what the law was for music.
Okay.
So it was after I recorded it that I started hearing these terms and news about, well, as good as it sounds, you can't really sell it. Okay. Oh, because you use these people's beats, you can't really, like, don't even put it out there. So if they hear it, you might get in trouble. I'm like, what did I just do?
Okay.
So fast forward 10 years after was when I met the producer who actually then produced the second version of the song, Marcus Cole, who also featured. And then we recorded it, made it more recent and modern. And that was, again, you're thinking 10 years after the first recording and the country is not still closer to being better to where the song would make more sense. So that's just the backstory to that song. Yeah, but definitely, I wrote the lyrics and I made some adjustment, had it a new ending to it. Yeah, but this was written over a decade ago.
Okay, so I guess first question would be, do you still have the original song?
Yes, I do. I have it on my computer.
Could you only on my computer? I would like to listen to this. So the original song.
Yeah, I can send you the original.
The reason why I brought that up was actually because you mentioned that when you went to Nigeria recently, you also did a new song. Is that song finished? And are you going to actually publish it? Like, how do you publish your songs?
Because I don't want to say this loosely, I have a company that I set up as a record label. I don't have a record label because I'm not investing in anybody. I'm still trying to get myself started. I have a company that I registered for like label distribution.
Okay.
So I use that platform to also publish my songs. I've also used the same platform to help a couple of artists publish their songs. So I pay a yearly fee, but because it's more like an agency fee, I get more like a wholesale type of pricing.
Okay.
And in this platform, what they do is they help you distribute the song to Spotify, iTunes, and over 200 retail sites for music online. And you can distribute it. Sometimes it takes a week or 2 weeks before they publish.
Okay.
But eventually it goes everywhere, including Amazon Music.
Oh, okay. So usually when I listen to your song, I listen to it on YouTube, and I don't think there are that many published on YouTube. So I may need to go to Spotify to go check that one out. What is the name of the song?
You Done Better.
No, this one or the new one?
This one, the new one that I just recorded.
Yes.
The new one that I just recorded is It Made a Way. Okay. And it's more like a dance music, pretty much. I actually recorded 2 songs.
Oh, you did? Okay. Are they going to be published anytime soon, the new ones?
Yes, next month, before the end of next month.
Okay. So let us know when those are published so we can actually listen to it. And that will be fun to do and see. I will see if I can steal some of it to use for our team songs going forward. But I love that song, You Go Better, You Done Better, I think. It's fantastic. And it's very timely too. And I know how you said it, like it was timely 10 years ago, but it's even more timely now. So that's a really good point. All right, brother. Goodness. We were going to end the podcast here. It's been fun so far. Again, if you wanted to reach out to us to either join us on here and have a conversation with us while we're recording, or if you have a question, comment, or topic you would like us to discuss, reach out to us at qafrican@substack.com or biimmigrant@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and we would definitely love to hear the different perspectives. The whole point of this podcast is to provide value to the African diaspora and Africans on the continent. And this would be a good opportunity to also get some wisdom and feedback from Africans and African diaspora as well. KD, thanks a lot. I hope you have a great night.
And you as well.
All right.
I'm running